Hello, and welcome back to our gripping detective story, The Smith Case. This is part 2, where we'll continue unraveling the mystery. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure to click the link here or in the description to start from the beginning. You don't want to miss the crucial details. For those returning, let's recap. John Smith was found dead in the library, and we have 4 suspects. Let's dive back in and find out what really happened. The Smith Case.
Just as Constable Hollins was finishing the interviews, Detective Inspector Arthur Hughes arrived at the scene. He began his meticulous examination of the house and the testimonies of its inhabitants.
Clues and conundrums.
The detective noted several intriguing details. 1. The TV in the living room was on. 2. There were broken plates in the dining room. 3. In the kitchen, there were some potatoes in the sink. 4. There were smudges of oil on the handle of the front door. 5. The gun was in John Smith's right hand. 6. There were no fingerprints on the gun. 7. James, the butler's, fingerprints were on the handle of the library door. 8. There were no fingerprints on the telephone. 9. The library windows were open. Detective Hughes pieced together the puzzle, focusing on the lack of fingerprints on the gun, a curious anomaly, as John Smith was cleaning it. And the lack of fingerprints on the telephone was another odd detail, he thought. It implied the use of gloves, but who had access to gloves?
Unmasking the Culprit.
Turning to Mrs. Bridget, Hughes inquired,
"Where were you when the shot was fired?"
"In the kitchen, peeling potatoes,"
she replied, her voice steady but eyes avoiding his gaze.
"I heard the shot and called the police immediately."
"Were you wearing gloves, Mrs. Bridget?"
Her eyes widened slightly.
"Yes. For the potatoes. They irritate my skin."
Hughes nodded, seemingly satisfied. He then retraced her steps. The back door was slightly ajar, leading to the garden, and beyond it, the library window stood open. He carefully inspected the window and found a slight smudge of cooking oil on the sill.
"It all fits."
Hughes murmured.
"Mrs. Bridget, your gloves are not for the potatoes, are they?"
Mrs. Bridget's composure faltered.
I don't know what you mean."
"You wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints."
Hughes declared.
"You exited through the back door, circled around, climbed in through the library window, and shot Mr. Smith. Then you returned the same way and called the police, all while maintaining your innocent facade."
The cook's face turned ashen.
"But why?"
Emily cried, horrified. Tears welled in Mrs. Bridget's eyes.
"He was going to fire me, after all these years of service. I had no choice."
The case was solved, and as Mrs. Bridget was led away, the once grand estate of John Smith fell into a somber silence, the echoes of a tragic betrayal lingering in the halls.
Comprehension Quiz. New vocabulary.
Conundrums are confusing and difficult problems or questions.
Example: the riddles posed by the ancient manuscript were real conundrums.
Smudges are blurred or smeared marks on a surface.
Example: there were smudges of ink on his fingers after he finished writing.
Odd means strange or unusual.
Example: there was an odd noise coming from the attic.
Culprit is a person who is responsible for a crime or other misdeed.
Example: the police finally caught the culprit who had been vandalizing the park.
Ajar means slightly open.
Example: she left the door ajar so that the cat could come in.
Sill is a shelf or slab at the bottom of a window or doorway.
Example: she placed the flower pot on the windowsill.
Faltered means started to lose strength or momentum.
Example: his voice faltered when he spoke about the accident.
Facade is the front of a building, especially an imposing or decorative one, a superficial appearance or illusion of something.
Example: the building's facade was beautifully decorated with intricate carvings.
Ashen means very pale with shock, fear, or illness.
Example: his face turned ashen when he heard the news.
Welled means rose to the surface and spilled or was about to spill.
Example: tears welled up in her eyes as she read the heartfelt letter.
Somber means dark or dull in color or tone, gloomy.
Example: the atmosphere at the funeral was somber.
Lingering means lasting for a long time or slow to end.
Example: she had a lingering feeling of unease after the strange encounter. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey to uncover the truth behind John Smith's death. Were your suspicions correct? We'd love to know your thoughts on the final reveal. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting detective tales. Stay tuned for our next mystery adventure.